Hi everyone! Oh my god, it's been such a long time. If you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Bhasha Mukherjee. I'm an NHS junior doctor in England and I'm also former Miss England. I have been putting off making this video, a sit-down video like this, for weeks and weeks, actually months. It's been months since I've done a sit-down video like this. And even today, I was meant to have filmed this video at least 6 hours ago, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. I procrastinated, and now it's 1 a.m. and I'm trying to film this without being too loud and waking everybody up in the house. But anyway, we're here now. So what are we going to talk about today? So actually, I wanted to give you guys a bit of a life update of what's been happening in my life. As you know, I've been sort of posting mainly vlogs and some, shorts and things like that. But in terms of life updates since my last video, I'm now in my second year of training as part of the foundation training in medicine, and I have some news to share. I have gotten into GP training. So I think the last time I was posting videos about my career was probably back in 2020 whilst we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I feel like so much has happened since then. If you've been following me on Instagram, then you probably know that I had a whole roller coaster of a ride in my F1 with mental health, experiencing burnout, recovering from burnout, and just sort of finding my place in sort of the NHS and working as a junior doctor, progressing as a junior doctor. So I wanted to just do a career life update. So we'll start off with what's my career been like so far. So I qualified from university in 2019, and for those of you that don't know, immediately after qualifying I won Miss England, which in a way threw a spanner in the works because I was preparing to go into my first job as an F1, and I got crowned the night before starting my job as an F1 as Miss England. So after working for 2 months in Boston Hospital, Pilgrim Hospital, as an F1, I was working in respiratory ward, which is supposed to be one of the busiest wards. Respiratory in general is one of the busiest specialties within medicine anyway, and I think medicine as a whole is quite a steep learning curve because there is just so much. I mean, it's like a proper puzzle. Every patient is a puzzle. A lot of the patients that we see in medicine are multi-comorbid with so many different medical conditions. They're on multiple medications. They're often quite elderly, frail, and there's just so much going on. So for my first job, I think it was like and at the same time being Miss England, that was again like two big shocks to my. Well, initially I thought after the first week that I can't possibly be carrying on both of these things, and I went to see my educational supervisor about possibility of taking a gap year. And at the time, I remember my supervisor very supportively, pointed out to me that actually I wanted to be doing medicine whilst also being Miss England, so maybe I should give myself more of a chance before copping out, really. So I gave myself a bit of a chance, and in the time that I was preparing for Miss World, I finally realised that the duties of Miss World are going to be, for this 1 year at least, or at least the months going towards Miss World, are going to be quite a lot, from fitness point of view, from social media, everything. So I needed to devote proper time to it, and I knew that my career in medicine is going to be a really long one anyway, so I can always pick up on that. So what I decided to do is, after working for 2 months in respiratory, I took an out of program. An out of program is basically like a gap year, and a lot of people don't know this, but you can do this immediately after uni. You can defer your entry to F1, and actually you can take it at any point during your training. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, you feel like you need a break, you can absolutely explore the options of taking something like an out of program. And I took an out of program for basically the rest of that academic year, but I also wanted to sort of keep the option open of me, being able to work if I needed to, or if I wanted to earn a bit of extra money. So I spoke to another former Miss England, Karina Tyrrell, who was at the time she became Miss England, she was not a doctor yet, but she was a medical student. And I asked her, what is it like, and is there a chance that I could sort of become de-skilled? Actually what she explained to me was that the amount that you learn in the 2 months is probably very minimal for you to sort of like forget. You'll always get a chance to relearn it if you restart F1 anyway. And there are skills that, you know, even if I was doing another placement, for example, that wasn't a hospital placement, I could get de-skilled in those. For example, like doing cannulas and bloods and things like that. If I was doing a GP placement, for example, I would get de-skilled in those, but you pick it up because the requirement of the job is that you practice, and you just pick it right back up, and you can ask for more support if you need it. So with everything taken into account, I decided to take this out of program with the option open in my mind that if I wanted to, I could still do locuming. And I want to say this, a lot of people don't know this, that even in F1 you can do locuming, which is basically freelance work, but you can only work in the trust that you've been employed by, which would have been the hospital that I started off at. Guys, if I'm looking really tired, you know why. It's been a long day at work and it's 1 a.m. at night, so I'm sorry. Okay, back to the question, back to the story. So in the middle of my time as Miss England, around February, March time, obviously coronavirus happened to the world, and I was approached by my trust to join as a locum because I had shown an interest to be put on the register, to sort of be contacted, and they did that. And it was great because at the time I couldn't really do anything else in Miss England as such because everything had halted around the world, but I really wanted to help out as being part of the medical force essentially. So I rejoined as a locum doctor in general medicine for 4 months between April and August, okay, and that was in 2020. And then I, at that time I was in contact with Health Education England. It would have been Health Education East Midlands, and I was in talks with them anyway because of taking my outer program, and I requested if I could get a job within the same deanery but in a different hospital. And now I have to say that initially when I first got my job in Boston is so far away, guys. It's so far away from everywhere. It's like in one corner of the world. It feels like it anyway. It takes ages to drive there. Although I had a really good time there. It's a really nice team of doctors. If any of you end up in Boston, I want to say it's actually not a bad place for introverts. And because the hospital is quite a small team, everyone knows everyone and everyone gets on really well and everyone supports each other really, really well as well. So I have a lot of positive things to say about Pilgrim Hospital, and I feel like because my journey started with that hospital, my Miss England journey started with that hospital, I just have a lot of positive memories with that place. So after that, in August 2020, I was able to get a job in Derby, which is where my hometown is, and it's much more central. It's in East Midlands, so much better in terms of being able to get around the country and stuff like that. And I was able to get this job because I was in touch with Health Education England, and they just basically plucked a job and gave it to me based on what I wanted. And I had first choice, and I wasn't put in the ranking thing for that year. So that was really good. So I started my first job as an F1 properly on this occasion in Derby Hospital, and that was in general surgery. Well, it was like technically neurology, but we were ward based, so we saw anybody that was under surgery in general surgery. That was my first job in F1 technically, and then my second job was in psychiatry, and my final job in F1 was in respiratory. So to summarize, I didn't have a great time in surgery. I experienced certain things that, in the workplace which were not very pleasant. I'm just going to say it's workplace bullying and discrimination on the basis of me being Miss England, and basically just having this life. I think in itself, when you're a public figure, it can be quite polarizing for people, the way they see you, the way they perceive you, especially because I'm quite a reserved person in real life. I tend not to make the first step in making conversations with people I don't know. So in a ward setting, I'm quite a reserved, shy person. It's very difficult to believe, but I am. Like, I'm really bad at small talk. I have over the years gotten better at this though, and I've been working on it, because I feel like I find it really not so hard when I do this with patients, but when it comes to everybody else, I really struggle. So I feel like because of what people had seen of me on social media, perhaps any news articles they'd read about me, they had a preconceived notion of what I was and what kind of person I was, and based on that, obviously, a divide can be created. And I think I personally felt very paranoid myself, and probably heightened certain behaviors of people more in my own head, because I felt almost exposed, given the fact that sometimes people knew something about me before I'd had a chance to introduce myself, or before they'd actually got to know me in person. So at that time, even though I had a really, really good year of locuming, etc., as Miss England already, I felt really quite, it was quite a difficult thing to adjust to in a new job, basically, where people didn't have the full backstory, they hadn't seen my whole journey, and it was a bigger hospital, and at the same time, they sort of see me about here and probably make assumptions, or maybe this was in my head, but anyway, so I had experienced some negative experiences in that job, and I experienced burnout and PTSD from certain incidents that happened. So for me, what didn't help was the pandemic, the lockdown after lockdown we were going into at that time. I remember I was trying to book a holiday for the longest time, and every time I would book annual leave, we would be in a new lockdown. And it was really difficult, and I think definitely by about November time into 2020, I was experiencing full-blown burnout. There was times when I was at work and my fingers were shaking whilst I was seeing patients, because I was so anxious all the time. I was crying at work almost every single day, and I think it really affected my confidence in myself as a doctor, and perhaps also my performance, so it had a multifold effect. Thankfully, my second placement, which was psychiatry, was an absolute blessing. It was so amazing. I had a different type of pressure. Again, there were so many COVID absences in the staffing and the senior support. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. And I found myself sort of having to find my own ground a little bit by myself. But there was this inherent vibe in this department I worked at. There was just this supportive vibe from my consultant, and knowing that my consultant was behind me and supporting me made me feel so much more confident, and it really helped to rebuild that confidence to take the actions I needed to take to heal myself. So I went through therapy. I got involved with the hospital in terms of trying to address the bullying, etc., and do something about it. And then, of course, so I was working at an inpatient unit in psychiatry. I think psychiatry is not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a really rewarding job if you're inclined that way. Now, I am the kind of person, psychiatry was the reason why I went into medicine, so I really enjoyed it. But again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Personally, I think surgery is not my cup of tea, but I'll go into it. Now, my final job in F1 was actually respiratory. And again, this was medicine, and I'd experienced respiratory before. Even though this job was such a stressful job, every day we'd finish just about in time or late or something or the other. And we had some really sick patients on the ward. I have to say, of all the 3 jobs that I'd done, was my most rewarding job ever. I genuinely started to believe by this point that I'm a good doctor. I think I'm knowing and learning how I need to manage my patients, and it was a proper turnaround point for me. So from the point of burnout, losing all confidence in myself around November 2020, by the time it was August 2021, I was really on a high. And then my first placement as an F2 was in GP, which is where I intend to go to, GP training. And again, it just was another high from that point. I felt really at home in this job. Again, not everybody's cup of tea, but in the practice I was working at, we were given a lot more autonomy, overseeing our own patient caseload, deciding our own plans, and doing lots of procedures and that kind of stuff. So I felt a proper high in this job as well. Really, really good about myself. And it came crashing down again when I did my second job in F2, which was a surgical job, and this time it was upper GI surgery. And I have to say, what I thought was a difficult job in F1, the start to my surgical job in F2 was something else. I started on night shifts. I had no clue about how the systems worked, none of these things, and I was plunged into one of the busiest night shifts, weekends even. I cannot tell you how clueless and lost and oh my god, what am I doing? I'm the worst doctor in the world kind of feeling on that one weekend. And the thing about surgery is that a lot of these patients, they are sick to the point where if you don't take the right action, they can overnight deteriorate and they could get a kidney injury, or they could it can get really, really, really sick patients when they are sick. Oh my gosh, I think up until January, I was getting re-traumatized. I was getting memories of my first surgical job, and it was so stressful because I was being so harsh on myself. And then I finally went on a holiday, that holiday that I've been waiting for the last 2 years. And after discussion with my educational supervisor and slowly compartmentalizing the issues that I was having at my workplace in terms of coping with the requirements of the job, etc., I finally, when I came back, finally started to find my ground. And I have to say that by the end of my surgical job, I felt so confident. I came a long way, basically. So that can happen. By the way, I forgot to mention that my F2 placement was in Mansfield. Again, it's a bit of a random place to work, but so far so good, and it's within driving distance of my house, so it's great that way. And now I'm on my final job in gastroenterology. Again, really, really sick patients, quite a tough job. Medicine though, but I feel like the learning curve is so steep, and I genuinely feel that in medicine, or any specialty really, the key is continuity and really knowing your patients. You don't need to know all of them, you just need to know your patients well, and I think that can give you a really rewarding sense in itself. And as I said, I have also got my job as a GP trainee 1, and it's starting in August, and I've got a job in London. Now, I sat my MSRA exam, which I will do a review for, the MSRA, on a later date. Basically, my MSRA was in January. As I said, it was around the time when I was getting burnt out again and re-traumatized with my surgical job, because I was remembering all the old stuff that had happened. And yeah, I did not ever think this would happen. London is such a competitive place to get a job at, but I'm very grateful that I've got this job. And actually, it's a TERS, T-E-R-S. If you're going to GP training, I would highly recommend the TERS category of jobs, because not only do you get your GP job, but you actually get a £20,000 bonus on top. I haven't done this job yet, so I don't know what the ins and outs of it are yet, but I do know that they are in slightly more deprived areas. But then I feel like I don't think this necessarily means that the job is harder or the training is worse or anything like that, because as I said, my GP job that I did in F2, it was actually a TERS job too. I didn't get paid the £20,000, but it's a TERS category practice essentially in Mansfield. And again, this practice I fell in love with because of how good the teaching was, how much of extra things that we could do, and how much we were left to our own devices to just get on with our own patient caseload. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a similar experience for me. I'm going to just summarize what my jobs are next year. I'm starting off working at St Anne's Hospital in Tottenham, and my first job is a psychiatry job. My second job is an A&E job, which is something I wanted. I wanted my A&E job to be second, and these are 6-month placements instead of like 4 monthly placements. So it's going to be quite a long stretch of time of me doing this. And I suspect that 6 months of doing psychiatry, I might forget general medicine. So I'm really looking forward to my A&E job to sort of bring all that knowledge back to the surface again in terms of pediatrics, obs and gynae, all the other specialties, because A&E is just an acute version of GP, isn't it? First point of call, essentially. So yes, that's a summary. Now, if you guys are keen observers, then you will spot something else in this video, which I'm not going to mention, but I'm not going to not mention it either. If you know what I'm talking about, comment in the comments below. Thank you for watching this, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.